How you doing? You just don't want to talk now.
Nope. You got this, dog.
You're just going to sit there with a frown on your face.
It's all you. Yeah, I'm resenting whoever designed these lights instead of a light switch. I just want a light switch.
We need a bigger office.
I need $1 million, but we can't always get what we want, Ryan.
Yeah. It's funny how in New York City, those two things are basically on par.
Light switches?
No, $1 million and bigger office.
Yes, that's true. Apple Music. Apple Music's pretty cool.
I know I do this to myself, but we use Google Music. We have like a whole family plan bundle where everyone gets like Google Music and no YouTube ads. And I think there were some other things in there. But Google Music got rid of Google Music. So now you have to use this thing called YouTube Music, which is basically the exact same thing. But there's just all these like little uncanny things. Like it no longer works with a Mac keyboard.
Why do you do that to yourself?
I told you I do this to myself. So yeah, I think at this point it's just no brainer. Like Apple has been great with integration across everything.
Yeah.
So I think I want to switch to that.
Yeah, you should. That's how I do it.
I think the most important thing to me is like I want to be able to like I don't want to have to curate my own playlists.
Yeah.
So if I can just go on and find like new music or like I'm working out, listen to a workout playlist.
Yeah.
I want access to that stuff.
They do have it. I have found that it's been more difficult to find good ones compared to when I was using Spotify. But then sometimes it'll surprise me. Like when I say, Siri, play chill music on my HomePod, like that's always great. And I think it uses what I've listened to. Mm-hmm. And it's like always good. Like if people come over, if I'm just relaxing, like that's great. Or even like fun music, it's pretty good, and it'll play like kind of like party music. But like I've been trying to find good playlists that I really love, and they have some cool ones, but not as the ones that I liked. Like Spotify had this one with like lo-fi beats or something like that, which I always loved. And I was trying to find something similar on Apple Music, and they had like Beatstrumentals, which is like close, but it's not as good.
Okay.
So I haven't found the playlist that I love as much, but there's a ton on here. And they do have like fitness right here, mood fitness. And so you can just right here, pure cardio. So that's all.
Okay. That's great. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. I use the radio stations more. So like if I want to listen to a bunch of like songs like The Weeknd, I'll just say create weekend radio.
Okay.
Create radio station based on The Weeknd. And that's basically like a curated playlist. So
yep.
It does a good job with that stuff.
No, it's an uncurated playlist.
Well, sorry, it's uncurated, but it's automatic. I don't have to curate it myself.
Okay.
It's radio.
Yep.
It's like, yeah.
Yep. Okay. That's yeah. When I say that uncurated playlist, that's basically what I mean. Very exciting topic.
My energy's coming back. It's slowly coming back.
I got the people in my feed will show up. I think Gary Bernhardt is the latest one, but I got the CalDigi, something like that, dock. It's made for MacBook Pro and this monitor.
Oh, cool.
It's fucking awesome.
Really?
I got it because like Chris Coyer wrote a blog post about it.
Oh, yeah.
It was expensive. It was like $250.
Yeah.
And it's kind of silly for like just a bunch of USB ports, right?
Yeah.
But like I'm so happy that.
Nice. You have it at home?
Yeah.
And it's just, what does it do with the monitor?
The monitor plugs into it, which by the way, like I was talking to your brother about this, like there's like 7 different types of USB-C and you have to get like the right cable into the right slot to power it. So it's just like,
oh yeah. Isn't it the right side of the MacBook Pro where you're supposed to power it?
I think that's just like a, like nice to have.
Yeah.
I think it powers on any side.
Yeah.
It just powers a little faster in certain ports. But this, like, it won't work if you don't have the right cable.
Okay. Even though all USB-C have the same interface, they're actually different cables.
Yeah. I can't tell you the difference. And I found like
that's annoying.
Some blog post about this hub and the monitor and how to hook it up and which cable to use. And it was super annoying.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah, the hub is awesome.
But once you got it set up, so what does it do? It just plugs your monitor in?
It plugs your monitor in. It provides power to your MacBook. It has a bunch of USB-C ports, USB-A ports.
Oh, cool.
That's the original USB 3.
So. Yeah. So when you set up, you just plug your MacBook into the hub?
Into the hub, and then basically...
With one cable?
Yeah, with one cable. And then the hub goes into the monitor. And the hub has its own power. And it powers the MacBook, passes the thing to the monitor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it has like SD card reader.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and just everything, all my USB accessories are just plugged in there. So it's not like, some are in the back of the monitor, but
I've already run out of those.
Yeah, I think you run out. Yeah.
Pretty quick. So,
Yeah.
Oh, cool. SD card reader is nice too.
Yeah, it also looks really nice.
Nice.
So
who makes it?
like CalDigi, something like that.
Nice.
Some combination of those words.
Nice. Cool, man.
There's one other thing. I can't run 2 monitors.
Oh.
But I don't
So if you went directly from a 5K into the MacBook, you could daisy chain it with another monitor?
I don't know. I think you might have to plug them both into your computer. But one of the things that's appealing about this is like you just plug it into your computer and that's it.
Yeah, that's great.
One cable. Yeah.
I'm a one monitor kind of guy.
I would like
always have been.
I would like 2 of these.
That'd be pretty sweet. I don't know though. Because then I feel like you just get it's like living in a bigger house and you just accumulate junk. So I guess that is why you'd want it. You left Manhattan.
Yeah, that's
How much
true.
junk do you have in your house that you haven't used in a year?
Well, okay, so we I'm just gonna tell a story and you can fill in the rest.
Okay.
We signed up for CSA, which is like, it's like a farm co-op thing.
Grocery.
They send us veggies. And I think we just did the veggies one.
Then you get weird ones. Don't you get like a paper bag full of like radishes and like turnips and like parsnips and things like
Those
that?
Those aren't the weird ones. There's like things we have to Google. Like, what is this?
Broccoli rave. I guess we're having broccoli rave tonight for dinner, sweetie.
Yeah, that's how it works. We did like the plan for just like, I think it's like a 1-person plan. And we're 2 people and
You can't even eat it all.
We can't even,
Yeah. It's funny.
There's been talk.
You're still ordering pizza like Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays.
No. We order pizza like every 3 weeks.
That's what I do. I go grocery shopping and then by Wednesday, I'm like, why am I ordering Seamless? I have all this food in my fridge.
Anyway, this is to answer your question. There's talk in our household of getting a second freezer to freeze all the fruit and veggies that they send us. So that's how much junk.
That's not the point of ordering fresh fruits and veggies, to freeze them and eat them 6 months later.
I know, but that's how much junk you accumulate when you
live in a house.
Oh, yeah.
So get derived state from props.
Yeah.
We've been good friends with that guy recently.
Since we started React.
Yeah. We were working on the Mirage REPL. Hopefully we're going to have a video soon. I'm not sure. I got to get a haircut, man. It's ridiculous. I'm actually getting one tomorrow. COVID hair. It might be here to stay. I don't know. Yeah, we were working on something fun yesterday. We were working on adding URLs to the Mirage REPL and letting people save. So did we talk about this on the podcast yet? About like the token, the browser token?
I don't think so.
We should talk about that because that will also refresh us because we might have a little chance to work on it here.
Yeah.
We wanted to add like what was the MVP version of adding like persistence to the Mirage REPL. And we didn't want to have like user login. We didn't want to like sign in with GitHub to save REPLs and all that stuff. We just wanted to start as simple as possible. And so Code Sandbox lets you create a REPL or a Code Sandbox as an anonymous account and update changes to it, even if you're in like an incognito browser. And we were kind of like, how does that work? And, you know, we basically reverse engineered it because if you're in the same browser, you can do that. But as soon as you lose that browser session, like you can't edit anymore, but you still have a URL to it. And if you happen to go back to that sandbox with the browser that you used to create it, then you can edit it further, even though you don't have a user account. So that's pretty cool. And so we want to do something similar for Mirage REPL because it's like the lowest friction way to just get started and like create something that you can save. So we kind of devised a scheme, and basically you get, what is it? You have 2 tokens that you get.
2 tokens. One is, we call it like the browser ID. So that just identifies like you as you, and it's unique for your browser. Stored in local storage. So it will persist as you open and close. And then the other is an editing token, which is like SHA-256 or whatever we're using, Nano ID, something like that.
Right.
That will give you write access to any sandbox. So if you have the if you have the editing token and you do an update and it matches the one that's in the database, we'll let the update go through. And if it doesn't, we'll reject. And so the question is, on the client side, how do we know if we should do an update or an insert? Like, do we just try the update, and then if it fails, we like do an insert to a new sandbox? And so we that's where the browser ID comes in.
Right. So the browser ID is public.
Yeah.
But the editing token is private.
Yep.
And so you could just do it with the editing token and do like a get request to see if I have permissions or something like that.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to have to do that. So how do you like persist that knowledge? And that's where the public browser token comes in. But the editing token is the only thing that will be checked from the auth perspective on the server.
Yes.
In the Hasura auth side. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then like you all generate on the client side.
Yeah, we generate everything client side, which is it's the first time I've ever done that in a public application.
Mm-hmm.
We generate the ID, editing token, browser token. So I don't know, maybe someone figures out like, oh, if I generate a null, I get access to everything.
But it makes it pretty easy because like Hasura is just like our dumb API, and so far it seems to be working out.
I mean, one of the reasons this has been so easy is because of Hasura, because we can go into the table and we can say that editing token is private. It can't be viewed. It can't be updated, but it can be inserted when you create.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's like seriously like the easiest. Everything I just described is like checkboxes we clicked.
Yeah.
Where like when you do this in Rails, like you end up like, just filtering and deleting it or whatever gem you're using. And
right.
Yeah.
Writing tests for it all.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of code. Pretty interesting stuff.
Now Hasura, this is interesting. Hasura does have this like regression testing where they can, you can like write queries and say like the result should be this. So I should be able to do like a query to get a sandbox, and it shouldn't contain an editing token. And so like that's like a test we could add.
Interesting,
because we could always accidentally like
uncheck the box,
check the box, uncheck it, or like I don't know, like we're pulling down changes and you get everything working in dev, and then you push it to like production, and how do you know that your dev like you copied over everything in dev to production? That's a TBD. I mean, I think we'll learn that. Yeah. Right now we've just been developing everything against a production instance. Right.
Yeah, you were asking about how to test, and then you spent some time looking over some of the Hasura docs because they have like their whole own testing framework thing, right?
Yeah. I have no experience outside the docs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But the work we were doing that might be, hopefully we'll make a video about it. It was cool because we were doing Cypress and Mirage, and so we built the start of this feature, like this V2 REPL and persisting sandboxes in Hasura. And we built it all with like tests. And then we used like the Mirage JS GraphQL library, which Rocky worked on, which we hadn't used before, and downloaded our schema from Hasura, fed it into that. And then we had like a mock Mirage server, which was amazing.
What we did and what we recorded really doesn't capture how amazing it is. You download your schema. Yeah. And it's one line to load that into Mirage. Yeah. And now all your create, get, everything just works. Yeah. There's some like complicated, like custom mutations that obviously Mirage doesn't know what it's doing behind the hood, but like it's all typed. All the types are there. So.
Right. So it was really fast to get started, and like just polishing that story, I think would make it pretty compelling. And then like we were in tests in Cypress, and then we got our test passing, and we were like, let's go try it out. And we just flipped over. We ran into something because what was the difference? It was we had bad data in Hasura.
Just bad data in,
but we wanted to try to load it on the V2 REPL thing, and once we fixed the null field in the Hasura data, it just worked. And like we could save data too. We could create sandboxes from like /REPL, and then it would renavigate and stuff. So that's awesome. Just like the ironclad contract, which is like the GraphQL schema, and having confidence that you can just develop against that and know it's going to work when you plug it into Hasura is like, I think it's such an awesome potential thing,
Yep. Feels way, way safer with the GraphQL stuff too, because like some of the errors we were getting, I think there was one, it was like ID was an int, and we were taking ID out of the URL, which is a string, because URLs are strings. And we got error from our Mirage server
right
away, which was
right.
awesome.
Yeah. So you could imagine that kind of thing working like in Mirage if you were just doing your own thing, and then like you talk to a real API and it's like rejects it, but like because it's all based on the schema, it's like it's pretty awesome.
Yep,
it's really cool. We did have to write a custom resolver because Hasura knows what to do with like the parameter where that's not encoded in the GraphQL schema.
Yeah.
That logic isn't encoded, so we just wrote a custom resolver really quick, and because all that stuff is standardized across tables, like you could imagine ending up with something like a Mirage JS Hasura library that does that stuff for you, and basically gives us the same awesome experience we had with like 80% of it with that, the rest of the like the field, like the queries and stuff. So pretty cool stuff though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. So hopefully that'll be ready soon. And then, that's kind of what we've been working on together.
Yeah.
You've been hacking on some stuff on your own.
Yeah. I've been
bye to Amplify.
Yeah. I'm still using Amplify for Auth and S3 access file uploads, but data layer was just I was trying to build an app with a bunch of has many relationships, and and some aggregates, and it's just too hard to translate over into their data layer.
Into
it's just, they call
Dynamo?
They call it AppSync, and AppSync is like the interface to the data that's stored in Dynamo. Some of it's limitations of AppSync, some of it's just not even limitations, but design of Dynamo. But yeah, it was way too hard.
You were asking questions on forums about how to do like many-to-many stuff, right?
Yeah. And there were answers that were just like not supported right now.
Yeah.
Do it like this. Yeah. They're just, in my experience, it just wasn't, like one-to-one with how you would write a web app with Rails.
Yeah.
Like you really have to know. Yeah. You just have to understand a lot about Dynamo.
Would you think you think someone who's done this a bunch would model their data differently than you did?
I modeled it to their
recommendations,
to their specs. Yeah. I mean, they have guides on how to model this. So,
okay. And it looked different than like if it was in Postgres or something?
No, with Dynamo, yes, it does look different.
Mm-hmm.
But with like the schema that you use to model it, it would look just like Hasura, just like Rails, just like Postgres.
Got you.
You define like I have a book, I have an author, and then I have a book author, and these are where the IDs all link up.
Got you.
So they do a great job with that declarative schema that like lets you developer just easily tie things together.
Yeah.
There's just some gotchas that come with querying data and organizing data. It's just like I said, it's just not a one-to-one translation from like, oh, you're used to building a web app with Rails or just with any, like PHP, just any sort of MySQL, MVC web app. There's some things that are really good about it, and there's some things that just, you kind of got to know or you learn. There's always ways around it, right? Like, Dynamo has Lambda triggers. So you can say every time a record gets inserted into Dynamo or every time a record gets updated, like literally run this JavaScript function that gets the record. And
like updates an aggregate or something like
exactly.
that?
So that's how you would do aggregates.
Whereas in Rails, you would just be able to just...
Yeah, you have count. And you can do... It's like you have indexes. It's, there's just... The SQL databases are just really good at that stuff.
Yeah.
So like it's just... That stuff is hard. It's not a one-to-one translation. So that stuff is hard. And I think for like the apps that I'm trying to build, the benefits of something like Dynamo and AppSync, just I don't have scaling issues.
Mm-hmm.
There were some really cool things about like just knowing that, I don't have to run ops on a database. I don't even have a database instance. I just have like an endpoint. Like that was a really good thing.
Yeah.
Knowing that like I could like literally click a button and I get like global scale, planet size scale database was cool. But again, those aren't the issues that I have. Like, what do I need to do? I need to like be able to like write queries from the front end and just get the data And that's my biggest problem.
Right.
So yeah, that stuff just wasn't a good fit for the app I was building.
I mean, I think that is why Dynamo was created, literally, in that podcast episode on Full Stack Radio where he's talking about that. That's what he was saying. So it's like, by the end of that episode, you listen and you're just like, yeah, none of these things matter to me. So
it's, I think Amplify tries to hide the Dynamo stuff from you. And unfortunately, you can't. And it's not fair. It's like not someone that works on Amplify might say like, no, you have to know Dynamo. But I think when you're reading the Amplify docs, there's a talk of models, there's a talk of relationships, but there's not the talk of Dynamo.
Yeah.
And then when you run into these things, that's when you...
it's Dynamo that's leaking. And so if you don't understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, there was something specific that you ran into that was like
there were
querying many.
Yeah, there were two things. So that's just like an unfinished section of Amplify.
Okay.
So if you
of the docs or the capability
of the capability.
Okay.
So if you're trying to get if you're building an index page that shows all posts. So like an admin index page that shows all posts, and then let's say posts have multiple authors. So on that index page, you want like a comma separated list of all the authors. That's you basically end up n+1ing there, and it's I mean it worked, right? It just feels weird. Again,
it's fast though.
Well, it's fast because all the data ends up stored locally on your computer, which also is an amazing part of using Amplify. But yeah, it's just something where it was hard to do. It didn't work.
Yeah.
I was getting null values. And so I ended up n+1ing, and that worked. And that was fast, but I'm still, if I'm loading 100 articles and I need their joins to get their authors, I end up sending 100 queries off to Amplify to get that.
Yeah.
And maybe you could do like some like in viewport thing. So like it only shows as like you scroll.
Yeah,
again, these are the things like, that's not what I need when I'm writing a web app. I need to be able to query data and get it quickly.
Right.
So like having to work around those issues was, just a problem.
Right.
And then the other thing is aggregates, which, I think that like most web apps that I work on are like, they just have a lot of aggregates, and it's limitation. And there's escape hatches, right? The Lambda triggers that you would, when a book gets inserted, and an author gets inserted, you like update the count somewhere. So there are escape hatches, but again, not the kind of thing I want to be writing.
Yeah. Especially on a side project with just yourself.
Like. Yeah. Yep. So I those two things were enough. There were also, those were the big ones. Along the way, there were like a million paper cuts. Yeah. But those two things were enough to be like, okay, like what am I getting out of this?
Right.
It's, so I switched to Hasura, still using Amplify for Auth. I think the Auth stuff is great. I think the Auth stuff is really good.
Nice.
Which is like Cognito, but again, Amplify just like packages it up nicely.
Nice.
So, yep.
Yeah, you were saying that the Hasura stuff was nice because you know what the guts are, even though it hides a lot of it. It's nice, and we even ran into that with the REPL when we started doing the V2 because we have these old links at V1, and we want to make sure that those links still work. So as part of like a zero downtime migration strategy to get us to V2 or whatever, we have like an ID2 column, and we wanted to copy it over. And we just went to the SQL tab and wrote some SQL that updated the whole table, and it was like really nice to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it brings me back to PHP MyAdmin, which is like one of the most. It's just one of the most badass.
Yeah,
it's just
dev tools ever.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
The thing I really like about Hasura is that when you don't understand how to do something, or Hasura doesn't have the feature, because when you're building APIs, there's going to be, when you're building a service that like makes generic APIs, there's going to be 5,000 missing features.
Right.
So when Hasura doesn't have a feature, like the answer is, well, this is just translating to SQL. So can you represent what you're trying to do in SQL? And for most web apps, the answer is yes, because most of us, I mean, I've been building web apps on SQL for 15 years now. So it's like, yeah, I know, like that's my mental model of how this stuff works. So you can always write an SQL function. You can always execute an SQL statement to just prep your database. Like you can create a view, right? If you need some like funky complex join information that you don't want to write yourself, you don't want to run on the fly, you can create a view.
Have you done something yet where you there's a new GraphQL field or something that runs some SQL that you wrote?
No, I haven't done that. The one thing that I have done, and like the thing that was like, it was simple but was mind blowing, is similar to what we were doing on the REPL, but I have slugs. I have like a database of books, and I have slugs, and I want to be able to have the slugs in the URL and not the ID. And so I have to do a where slug equals this. It's not, I'm not using the
ID.
Yeah, the find by PK, which is like the default
GraphQL query type
that they give you. They give you like the find all. So I do find all books where slug equals this.
Right.
And slug isn't indexed. And there's in the UI, there's no option to create indexes. And so like, it's funny, I found an issue and people were complaining. Like the things were funny. So someone was like, "Oh, can you add this? This would be really helpful." And they were like, "Yeah, well, we can add this in the future." And then someone else was like, "Can't you just like look at all the queries I have coming in and just automatically create indexes?" And it's like, yeah, that would be pretty badass if that worked. But then, so like those things would be great,
right? And maybe they'll be features one day.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's just SQL under the hood. I shouldn't say just SQL. It's SQL under the hood. So you can go over to that tab where you write SQL statements, and you can do create index on books, index slug on books. Yeah. And then you're done. You have the index. Yeah. And that's that's amazing. That's really, really amazing. Like, again, it just all translates to tech that you know.
Yeah, that is cool. Really cool. Yeah, I love it. I want to keep using it. But I'm excited to see where we end up with the REPL stuff, because that's like public and the auth rules. I did a little bit of the auth stuff on my personal site with the work journal admin. I think we were having trouble figuring out, there was no clear way to use the editing token from the request and make sure it matches. How did we do that? Didn't we test that? Weren't we originally trying to?
No, I think we did. I think we did
from the request. We sent it as a header. That's why. Remember? So we couldn't figure out in the auth rules in Hasura, when you add those rules for different roles, you can do things like make sure the count is less than 20 and stuff like that. But if you wanted to do something like make sure the database record that they're looking up in editing token matches editing token from the request payload, we couldn't figure out how to do that. But so they don't let you access the request body, but you can access the headers. And so you can add X Hasura whatever as a header and use that as effectively a user ID, right?
Yeah,
it's like a user token.
Exactly.
But in our case, it's just an editing token until we have let's say we add user accounts one day. But basically we just, from our UI, add that as a header. Yep. And then it worked.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
It's super cool.
Yeah. It is interesting to think if you're 2 years down the road and you were working full time on an app like this, you just have all those things are hidden. That was one thing that you did like about Amplify, which was that a lot of the stuff was in code that's not in Hasura.
Oh, I mean, I moved away from the app sync data stuff, but I think the coolest part of Amplify was that they have an actual schema file.
Yeah.
And they have these directives where you define things like models and auth rules and relationship. Yeah. And all that stuff is in code. That's in Git. That's
right. Version controlled. It can be reproduced.
Yeah, you can read that. I mean, so there's you'd have to write your own tools, but you could, this is a thought I had, you could read in that file and show a matrix of all the things that are editable by admins and see that over time.
Yeah.
Cool. There's an artifact.
Right.
Where I think Hasura, they log that information in a database table somewhere, but it's not in code.
Right.
So I think the in-code thing is really nice.
Yeah. Same with the fact that you added an index. If you had to redeploy Hasura somewhere, you'd have to rerun that, but you have no artifact of it.
Yeah.
So
I think
maybe you do a dump of the Postgres table.
I think that they have migrations, and when you run SQL, you can mark, I'm running this SQL as a migration, and that saves it somewhere that's accessible. I haven't transferred one Hasura to another, so
Yeah.
I know you can mark certain
Yeah.
statements as
I guess the
migrations.
fact that you can just get the create table
Yeah.
would be enough. And if you could get
Yeah, 'cause
all the
that-
auth
yeah.
rules too, because those are not part of Postgres, right? Those are part of Hasura. Like when we did that and we said there's these roles, those aren't saved in Postgres, are they?
They might be. I
mean, they might be.
Hasura has to store them somewhere.
Yeah.
So
it might be part of it.
Yeah.
But that is cool to think about that. And like you were saying, the migrations in the Rails app aren't never, I mean, when do you go back and look at old migrations in a Rails app?
yeah, never.
Basically never, right?
Yeah, migration. I mean, I migrations are good for like a month, and
Yeah.
then you just want everyone to
Use the create
to
table.
load the schema.
Yeah.
And then migrate off the schema that they loaded.
So from that perspective, it's fine that people are making changes in the UI and you're not seeing the history of those changes over time.
Yeah, the history isn't important.
Isn't
It's
important.
more.
It's the reproducibility of
yes,
it. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't need to know when things happened or the order they happened. I just need to be able to transfer the database. And
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. So maybe, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But if you start using Hasura on your side project and we use it on the REPL, what parts of the code first approach, you miss or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you one thing that I ran into, which is, Amplify gives you a set of services like Auth and data, and they wire everything together, which is great. So you know that like any data requests you send out, it has a user tied to it. It has auth rules. Like that's just all. That's what you're paying for. Like that's a service that they provide. With Hasura, I have it hooked up to Amplify Auth, which was easy. I found some Stack Overflow with, just some code that I copied and pasted and didn't look at. So, no, there's like code samples that were super easy to follow and get working. But I have a JWT token that Amplify provides, and then Hasura validates. And the Amplify tokens are good for an hour by default. And so I had gotten it working. I get the token into Urkel, and Urkel starts making requests with it. And then I was like, wait, don't these tokens expire? And I went to like JWT.io and pasted it in. I was like, yeah, they expire in an hour. I'm like, so what's going to happen when I send a request to Hasura with an expired token? So I had to wait an hour. I didn't know
He'll play Last of Us.
Like I could have made a fake JWT.
Yeah, with the old expires.
With the old expires, but then it wouldn't be validated against Amazon. It would be validated against like my custom code.
Right.
So that's like a huge slice of production code that I'm like, quote unquote, like not testing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like mocking the right seam there, but I'm not like, I wanted to know like what happens when I make a request with
a token from
Amazon that Hasura is going to go back to Amazon to validate.
Yep.
Or use the Amazon logic to validate.
Yep.
And it fails. So like, yeah, I opened up my like Get Pocket and read some old articles.
Nice.
Waited an hour and tested it, saw the error, and then Amplify Auth is great. They provide a function that's like get JWT token, and it's a promise, returns a promise. And if you don't have a token, it goes off to their service and fetches it. If you do have a token and it's not expired, it just instantly resolves with that.
A new token.
Yeah. No. With that token.
Okay.
With the token. Because it's not expired.
Okay.
You've already fetched a token.
Expired.
And if you have a token that's expired, it just goes off. It returns a promise. So it goes off to the service and gives you a new token. So
cool.
From Urkel's point of view, I just say the token is always, await, amplify, get token.
Cool.
And I never have to worry because it's interesting.
Wait, but how often do you refresh? I mean, couldn't you still have a bad request if you make a how does Urkel know when it's time to revalidate the token?
So that's the thing.
Refresh the token.
Urkel says like, you should cache the token and like look at the expired and then like, your token's expired. So you should go off. I don't have to do any of that though, because think about it. I just call amplify.getToken.
You do that every time you make a
every
request.
time because it's cached. If Amplify has a token that's not expired, it just instantly resolves with that. So so I do.
Do you have to do that in like your app code?
It's in your Urkel setup code.
Okay, so it's like one time at the root of the app.
Yeah.
Now when you make a request,
I have a.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I actually recommend like Urkel folks do this. I have a provider in my app called like GraphQL provider, and that thing just basically wraps the Urkel provider, creates the client, passes it into the provider. The Urkel configuration, my Urkel configuration is like maybe like, I don't know, 60, 70 lines of code, because you have to like, I have to call that Amplify Auth thing. And then there's like there's another code that you have to do to like merge your auth headers with their GraphQL thing. And it's like, it's one of those like immutable merges, and it's like very deep. So it's a lot boilerplate. Yeah. But that's why I recommend just creating GraphQL provider and doing all this stuff in there. Yeah. Dude, Urkel has some really cool like caching logic, and you can like progressively get more and more advanced in caching. So you can cache just based on query. So this query is always cached, and then you can start to use like ID and type name to get like a normalized cache.
Doesn't it do that automatically?
No, you have to opt into it.
I think it did automatically, where on my recipes app, when I first time used GraphQL, I used Urkel to do the data fetching. I fetched all the recipes on the home page, created a recipe, and then when I went back, it was already there.
Yeah, so I think it does some stuff. Cool. It must do some stuff automatically. When you do the auths, when you add in auth, you take ownership of all that.
Got you.
And so
that was probably why.
Yeah, I had to add those.
My apps don't have auth.
Graphing. Caching libraries. But yeah.
That's pretty cool. No, it's a cool
I'm really
library.
Impressed with it.
Yeah, me too. And it's just really fast and easy.
Yeah, I love the progressive, like, hey, right now, I just need to query.
Right.
I need a query and I need to get data back, and that's it. And then like, oh, actually, I need normalized caching. So like when that's ready, when I need that, I'll opt into that.
Right.
So
I just wanted to check real quick and see what the star counts were, like the popularity. SWR and React Query are both like 13,000, and Urkel is, what did I say, 5,000?
Oh, really?
Yep, 5.1 thousand. I think it's a little older, but I think it's good and well maintained.
My experience with
I haven't used
has been great.
Yeah, it's great.
Also, it's narrower than React Query and SWR.
Oh, because it's focused on GraphQL. Yeah. Right.
So
right, that makes sense. I've been using SWR for new projects or sub projects and stuff because I like it, and I've been using Next, so it feels good to use them together.
Yeah.
But I do like Urkel. It's cool. What was I going to say? What were we just talking? What did you just talk about for 20 minutes?
Caching.
Yeah. Urkel. I think I might have gotten too much sleep last night. That's neat, though. I thought there was something with testing or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Like, okay, so I just kind of gave you like a lot really, really fast. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was that JWT token and validating that, like how to go about it and test it. Because like, I joked that I waited an hour.
Yeah.
But that was like, I'm going to have to test that stuff again.
Yeah.
Or stuff that's in like a similar category to that. So I guess like the question is like, as we use more and more of these services, it doesn't really have anything to do with Hasura or Amplify, but these are two services that have a boundary of, here's some code you paste to validate that service 1 can talk to service 2. And here's some code you just put into like service 1 to like validate it.
Right.
Like how do you go about like testing that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Part of my like answer here is like, I should be like spinning up new Hasura instances and new Amplify instances and like using something like Cypress to do like a full end-to-end test. Because otherwise like,
but one of the things that makes it also compelling is like that you can just you can create an index from the Hasura UI. And when you were saying that and you were like, and I'm done, and I was like, that's awesome. Like you don't have to get Postgres running on your computer, which like the last time I had to pull up a Rails app, dude, my Postgres was like, it was a nightmare just to get it running and like you're on the command line and you're like PGL and it's like startup. Oh, did it start up with the OSX service?
Yeah.
And what's the URL to connect to? And I literally just want to like try something out. And then like you have to copy the data down and like ingest it, MySQL dump or PG dump or whatever. Like that stuff sucks. So it's nice that, but then when it comes to this stuff, it's like, yeah, you the tests, like the high level tests that start out with a clean database and test it all out is pretty good.
Everything being in code, and when I say that, like everything, like Rails, everything being like Rails code
from the database to the UI.
Yeah, it makes testing really easy.
Yeah.
Like right, like there's like I'm using Devise, they provide a bunch of test helpers.
Yeah.
So if I want to test what does this look like when the user isn't an admin, or what does it look like when this user I just created with this factory views the page, it's super easy. But like, I mean, doing that with Hasura and Amplify, it's like, okay, I got to go over to Amplify, create a user. Yeah, that's like how I would. That's what I'm like. That's a path I'm going down. Where if it's like I use more services and I have less code, that means testing is going to need. It's going to be more like end to end testing, where like we spin up services, because that's the only way you know that it's working.
Well, the other way is you mock, right? Which is what we do for the HTTP stuff. Because like we're not going to test that like given
I know
like a sandbox exists in Hasura. When I visit the REPL in React, it fetches it from Hasura, and so therefore we feel confident in that boundary because like we are confident because the contract's clear.
I mean there's three different sets here. Like the first set is like I'm writing the front end and I'm writing the back end, and like I know the only way the back end can change is if I change it. So I'm really confident in my mocks.
Right.
I'm just super confident in my mocks. And that's how we've always felt with like Mirage.
Right.
And there's like a level up from that, which is like I'm using Hasura and I'm writing the front end. And Hasura, like part of Hasura is it provides these GraphQL queries. That's its contract. So it could change, right? It could come up with a new version that's like, we no longer provide like where. Instead, we do sandboxes. Where is its own special query for for whatever reason they come up with. But still, that's less likely to change, even though it could. It could change without you knowing, but it would probably be because of an update.
Yeah.
But then, like, there's way further down the line is like Hasura talking to Amplify.
Yeah.
Where you're just calling like amplify.validate auth. That feels weird for me to mock. Because I don't know, like I'm mocking that at like a function level. Like I'm not mocking like the HTTP responses there because that's Amplify's implementation detail.
Right. So that wouldn't give, function mock wouldn't give you any confidence that works.
I'm just function mocking Amplify. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's like some business logic you lose, right, when you do a function mock. So, yeah, no confidence. That's exactly.
That's all what it comes back to for me. You know, that's what a good test is, really.
Yep.
You can deploy a dependable update without worrying if it's broken. What was I going to say? It's also like we talked about this one other podcast where it's like all this work to figure out how to use these things, but then like the actual change is like, a couple clicks or like one line of weird code in like a auth thing, but you've just saved yourself writing all this code and tests. And maybe it's that sort of thing where it just doesn't change that much and it ends up not being a problem. Like you do test it when you first set it up, but like you have auth set up now and like it's just never going to change because as long as these services are up and running, like it's just never going to change. And so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. I mean, if I were providing a service, that's what I would kind of
tell people. That's
what I would feel
exactly.
like. It's
you
like,
say it's my job to keep this going.
But I don't know, man. like I'm writing an app with like services. Like there's something about writing Rails code. Like I understand.
I mean, think
Rails
about
code.
think about how much of the REPL is done by Plunker and like unpackage. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's just like that's their responsibility, not ours. But like none of it would work at all if that doesn't work. And there's like, if you look at the network tab when you go to Mirage/REPL, it's ridiculous.
You know how Rails provides like validate presence of?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm making like the 2005 argument of like, you need to validate that stuff because you don't know how it works. You need to write tests for it. Right. Where this is just
and DHH even said that you shouldn't do that, right? Didn't he say you're testing the framework in the sense you're...
The thing is with validate presence of like, I'm just using a keyword and the types of mistakes I'm going to make with that are like literally typoing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like where like Hasura talking to Amplify, there's a lot of glue code. Like there's glue code to like get the JWT out of the header, to validate it with like, amplify auth.validate to read the roles out of the token. Like there's a lot of code there that I could make a mistake. I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, but then again, people are making websites with if this and that. So
yeah, it's definitely it's not, and like this is not like productive conversation. This is more like a
worrying about
how do you feel good about these?
Right.
Like, yeah,
right.
Think this is what started this off for, like, using these services are great. I like it. I'm in. I'm sold. But these are the things that I miss.
Yeah.
When I had all the code on my computer, or all in one app.
Yep. Yeah, but then you have to make a change, and then you just want to shoot yourself because you have all the code, so you don't. And now it's, I can just pop it open and press a button. So there's a trade-off.
Oh, and the trade-off is, I mean,
we're excited about it.
It's like, yeah, we're way past excited about it. I mean, it's like,
sold, but it's things you miss. Yeah. Interesting.
And maybe the solution here is like,
it's like, how do people test their drip email campaign workflows? They don't, probably. I mean,
I can tell you from experience that they just
don't work, and then you hear about it.
Sacrifice a goat every 6 months,
or you hear about it. From someone.
You hear
about
it.
Doesn't happen.
You know, years ago, like, to do end-to-end testing, it was really complicated.
Mm-hmm.
You had to do Selenium, which required like this whole scripting thing, and the Firefox plugins to control it. End-to-end testing now
might be easier.
Yeah, I mean, Cypress is. You pointed at a URL.
Yeah,
and
well, that's what I was thinking. Maybe the answer here is like just there's a middle ground, right? And it's just Hasura gives you a PR, like a staging server.
Yeah,
and that's it. And then you just have a staging thing. Auth 0 could have a staging version. Amplify could have it, or whatever. Cognito could have a staging version. Most of these places have that.
I think they do. Yep.
They do. And so you could just have those things, You could set up a thing that does all that potentially and uses URLs to connect them, and then you just have a little bit more confidence that way, because that's what it's really about.
Yes.
So that's pretty interesting. But like, I feel like the auth thing, as a specific example where you have it doing that thing, once you get it set up, I have a feeling you're
I'm never going to touch it.
And it's going to work forever. You know what I mean?
Dude, it's like a TypeScript file in a Next.js API route.
Yeah.
That like talks to like.
It's like 5 lines long.
No, it's like probably like 50 or 60.
Okay.
It like takes a JWT, validates it, decodes it, responds with like the roles, tells Hasura the roles. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Maybe we'll get like new testing tools, new ways to think about testing these things.
Right.
Dude, I have no idea. Like, I guess if it like 500s and the Hasura just blocks a query and it's up to my UI to be like, oh, your query didn't go through.
Yeah. We thought about this a little bit with like the idea of having, if Mirage were to get popular enough that service providers would want to provide like Mirage adapters. So let's say Stripe. So instead of developing against Stripe, you just in the same way we got to do it against Hasura and didn't have to use Hasura. So like if this was a popular and standard enough thing, you could just use a Stripe thing. And even if Stripe gives you an SDK, right, where you use to call functions, and those things translate to HTTP calls. But the details of the HTTP call are implementation details. But if you had those mocked and responded to in the way that True API does, and it's matched up with the version of your SDK, now you can do it a lot better.
Yeah. This was also something along those lines where, like, if Hasura and Amplify integration was so popular, you could see Amplify just saying like, oh, here's your Hasura URL. Put this URL into Hasura, put this.
Delete the 50-line file. And then you don't have this problem. I think you're really not thinking about this anymore, because then it's really not your problem.
Yes. Yep.
In the same way, ImageX running FFmpegX is not your problem. That's just like something they're going to do.
That's pretty good, because we don't ever say like, oh, validate that like ImageX
whatever
use this compression algorithm or return an image with this height and width. We just...
But that's because it's the contract, whereas there's no contract here between Hasura and Amplify. So that's where the tricky part is.
Yeah,
But your function is talking to Amplify and talking to Hasura, and so you could write code around that part, and you could understand the contract there and mock that out potentially.
Yeah, but then it just ends up being function mocks.
But yeah, that's a problem. That's yeah.
Because then I just say, oh, expect
that's where if they gave you a testing library, it'd help.
Yes.
Because then get token returns one of three things, and you're not making those up. You have all of the possible states of it, and you can put it into any state easily.
Yep.
So
testing helpers would be huge here.
Yeah.
Hey, give me an expired JWT token.
Exactly. That's what you want.
That was valid.
Yeah, that's what you want. I think. If you're going to have to write code to interact with a service, then the service should provide you things in code that let you mock and fake out the different states, because now you're responsible for it.
Great. This is yeah. And I like this better than being like, oh, I'm going to set up a whole end-to-end testing dev staging environments.
Yep.
I'm thinking of like when I first used Stripe with Rails. I don't think this is official Stripe library, but they have Stripe mock, which
did all that basically.
Yeah, and it like you can say like, okay, I'm going to add this credit card, and this isn't a valid credit card because there's not enough money on the account.
Right.
And so then I can go to my form, or I can, I didn't do UI testing in Rails. I just submitted, JSON payloads.
Yeah.
But I could do a JSON payload with a credit card and make sure that I got an error back.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So they did that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about like the SDK? What about the JavaScript SDK for Stripe? Does it have stuff like that? Give me a response code that's...
I don't know.
They have fake numbers that when you hit the URL for your for whatever, will return those things. So that's closer.
I think that's primarily what they do. I think they have like numbers that are like, this will reject with this specific, exactly specific reason.
Right. Step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. We used the Ember Stripe integration on Ember Map, and that had its own service level. Yeah. That you could tweak. But yeah, you that was something that an Ember developer had to maintain. You want to push this on Stripe.
Totally. Imagine Amazon gave you a URL that always returned an expired token. That's close. That's closer to this. If you could always get an expired token immediately, you could set up a test that hits that and is very close to having the mocked thing in the code. I think the mocked thing in the code is the best. But if they did something like Stripe did, you wouldn't have had to wait an hour, right? Because you would have said, give me a validated Amazon JWT that's expired. I can just get it from this URL. It's always the same one. Anytime I need to test a scenario, I can do that.
Similar to the Stripe credit cards, I could say like, hey, Amazon, like when I log in with, Bob and password, I always get back an admin.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. That'd be cool. And then you could use those things in Hasura and see how Hasura handles the different cases if you need to adjust something there.
So this is what I think, I'm going to make a prediction here, but I think as we adopt more of these services, we're going to see better testing tools or more contracts like this, like fake cards in Stripe that resolve to these errors.
Right. I think the code level thing is the best because it's going to be easier than... Yeah. You don't have to be connected to the internet. You can be offline. All the benefits of using something like Mirage. So I think you should just be able to have that.
Yeah. It's mocking. And mocking is great.
Right.
The problem with mocking is it gets out of sync.
Exactly.
So
if the mock
is provided by
the library and it's literally it's versioned. That's the other thing that's great. Like you're using an SDK that's in your package JSON that has a version, so that thing can provide the mocks that are in sync.
Yeah. Which
is really cool because then if you bump the version, I thought about this a long time ago, but let's say you did that and you had all your tests written against that, and you bump the version, which changes the contract in some way you didn't know about or didn't read about in the changelog or something. The mocks that you're importing and using in your tests are different now, and they should fail your test suite. So you should know before going to prod whether your code is compatible with the new Stripe API, because your test would fail.
Interesting. Just so let's completely side note here, but I think Stripe is like hardcore, like don't ever break the API.
I mean, I believe it, and they have a lot of customers. But let's say we were still at TED or something like that, and we made like an Amplify-like ORM, like data fetching thing. So instead of telling people to write fetch statements and hit endpoints, you just install, TED data layer, and you just get to do data.find talk ID1. And that does an API call, Well, I guess that's the point. That point would be hidden behind that. So if you upgraded, but yeah, you could just imagine like providing a mocked layer there that in your test you can say that. What does that do? It hits Mirage basically and returns it. And then if the data is different for whatever reason, the mocks would have updated that, and so your test would fail. Yeah. So the response could be like a JSON structure that's different. So I think that could be pretty cool. I think if everyone was on some sort of standard for like mocking HTTPs, it could be a pretty powerful thing, but I'm not sure what that would look like. But I mean, the GraphQL stuff answers a lot of that because it's typed. But you need to be able to do things like you can do with Mirage, whatever mocking tool you're using, which is like given 3 books exist on the server, here's what it looks like. Because you need to be able to, as an app developer, you need to be able to have control over the business logic and the server state and all that stuff. It's not enough to just have, you just need the different configurations of server state. So,
I mean, the Mirage layer is really nice here. Like, if someone from Hasura wrote all the Mirage stuff.
Exactly, because like Stripe can say, oh yeah, here's the 10 card configurations and all of the possible codes. And there's like 10, that's it. But what about your Amazon Amplify backend with the 10 roles that you created and the 3 different things? What happens when you're an admin and you try to create a book or something like that? Amplify can't know ahead of time at the SDK level what your app is going to do because that's like a custom rule you've configured. So when you get to a generic service like that, you have to give the person who's using it and configuring it enough power to be able to specify what the different all the different configurations are. Whereas Stripe can just say, oh, here's a 10 different failure states. But with your app, there's like lots of different states. Yep. So you need to be able to say, okay, given this server state, when this happens, and you need to do that like programmatically. So that's where you want like a code thing to do that, I think.
I mean, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think it could happen. So interesting. Cool. Well, hopefully we'll have the REPL. We'll have some more stuff to talk about. It'd be fun to have that because then we can start adding examples to the docs. Someone was just asked, I was just using the REPL a bunch actually like the last few days in Discord, and someone was asking about factories, and it's just great to be able to send an example, and they're like, I really wish this was in docs. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. So that'll be fun that we have URLs that we can send people, and then it'll be fun too to do like embedded versions. I was thinking that you have like a REPL with ID 123, and then you can make a little component that fetches that and just shows it, Mm-hmm. It doesn't even have to be editable. Like, it could just be a whole separate component that fetches a sandbox and just renders it and lets you do the Postman thing. But you don't have to do. We don't have to do
code mirror.
Exactly, and we don't have to handle events from that side and recompile everything and have a stat. It's like a very simplified version of the REPL that you can embed in the doc so people can just see it work. So I think it would be awesome. And I think it would be it wouldn't be that hard because we have a lot of that code. It would just be like copying the REPL and trimming it down,
Yeah.
I think it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. Because I think the docs, I went over them a lot when we first launched like Mirage, but there's a lot of stuff in there that was still from Ember, I think. And it's just way easier to just see an example. It's just way easier. So I think if we had that, we should go back through and like trim down the docs a lot and replace a bunch of the stuff with examples, because I think that's just the best way to understand.
Yeah. I mean, just me as a developer, like code is mutable. It's also just, I want the higher level explanation of like why you made these APIs. Right. But once I understand that for like how they actually work,
I want to see the code.
Yeah. Because I understand your intention behind why Mirage exists.
Right.
So now I just want to play with code.
Exactly. So then you can have a little button in the REPL, and then it just links you to the REPL, and then you can fork it.
Oh, yeah, because it's the actual sandbox.
Yeah. Pretty neat.
Yeah.
Coming soon. Cool. All right. I think that's it for this week. Now that I have like more energy and this podcast is over. Maybe it's because I'm going out to dinner soon. It's going to be fun. All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.